All right, guys, we're going to do some review with what your quiz was over. After checking them, I can see that some of you are still confused on some things. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the rules for subtraction again. And as always, please feel free to go back and watch those videos that I made with the lessons. Those are excellent things to be watching before a quiz and before a test, and your test will be coming up soon because we're almost done with this chapter. So the first thing I have up on the board, it says subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. And this was in my other videos with our notes. And in our notes, I called it add op because you add the opposite. So we're going to look at a couple examples of subtracting and how is that adding the opposite. So if I have an example like 5 minus 2, 5 minus 2 is the same thing as change your subtraction to addition, change the sign of the next number to its opposite. So add op. So now my rule says I have here's my dog Buster. I have one positive and one negative. So because they're not the same, I subtract them. And 5 minus 2 is 3. 5 is bigger and it's positive, so my final answer is 3. Okay, we'll look at a couple more. If I have like a negative 12 minus 7. First of all, I'm going to apply add up, so your first number stays the same. Your subtraction becomes addition for add. Your next number becomes its opposite for op. So instead of a positive 7, it's going to become a negative 7. Now some people were struggling with the plan. Now that I've applied add op, I follow my rules for addition. So if I'm looking at this, I have two negative numbers. So my plan, because they're both the same, I'm going to add them together. But because they're both negative, my answer should be negative. So a negative 12 plus a negative 7, I'm going to add them and get 19, but I need to reattach that negative sign. Reattach that negative sign. All right, let's look at another one. Okay, when I have a subtraction problem, my rule says to keep the first number the same. Change subtraction to addition, change the next number to its opposite. So I just did add op, adding the opposite. Now my plan, I have one negative and one positive. So because I have one of each, I cannot put them together. I have to subtract. 22 is negative and it's bigger, so my answer is going to be negative. So when I subtract these, 22 minus 13 gives me 9, and it needs to be a negative 9 because my 22 was bigger and it was negative. So my final answer should be negative. So those are some examples reminding us how to make a plan, apply add op. Again, subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. And then in our notes we talked about add op. The next thing that I want to talk about is absolute value. We talked at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of our notes, actually it was one of the first lessons or two, that absolute value refers to the distance a number is from 0 or the distance a number is from another distance. Absolute value is a distance, and because it refers to a distance, it's always positive. And you can flip back to the previous videos and to the notes that we've taken, and all of that is in there. Absolute value, so like if I said the absolute value of a negative 2, the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2, because a distance is always positive. You cannot go a negative distance. So if we are talking about the difference of something, like on your quiz it talked about the difference from one point to the other point, or the difference in temperature. So if we say that point A is at 32 and point B is at -8, and it wants you to find the difference between them, or the distance between them, that's a subtraction problem. So we're going to say, but because they're talking distance has to be absolute value. So we're going to say the absolute value of 32 minus -8, and this is on that worksheet that a lot of you had a hard time. A lot of you just did this and you didn't show the absolute value. So within here we have to apply add up, so that's why all of these lessons are building on each other. So we learned about absolute value, and then we learned the rules to addition, and then we learned the rules to subtraction, so that now they're all building on top of each other. So now I have to apply add up, so my first number stays the same. I'm going to change subtraction to addition. The next number to its opposite. It was a -8, it becomes +8. I still have absolute value. So now they're both positive, I can add them. 32 plus 8 gives me 40, and the absolute value of 40 is 40. So point A and B are 40 spaces away from each other. They are 40 spaces away from each other. If we said something like it was 10 degrees, then dropped to, I don't know, 6 below. What is the difference in the temperature? Again, you're talking a range of something, a distance, a difference of from this spot to this spot. So that's absolute value. So the absolute value, so I had 10, and we're talking the difference or the distance between them. And then 6 below is represented by -6. So 10 minus -6. So I have to apply add up. The first number stays the same. So change subtraction to addition. Change the -6 to its opposite. 10 plus 6 is 16, and the absolute value of 16 is 16. So the difference in their temperatures, there was a 16 degree difference. Okay, let's look at one more absolute value question. What if I had something like point A is at -14, point B is at 3. So if I want to know the difference or the distance between, so pretend it's a number line, I want to know the distance from here to here. So what is that difference? What is that distance? So the absolute value, because we're talking a distance, -14 minus 3. So my first number stays the same. Change subtraction to addition. Change the next number to its opposite, because subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. So now they're both negative. I can add them together. So a -14 and a -3 gives me a -17. And the absolute value of -17 is 17. So they are 17 spaces from each other. My distance between them is 17, so it has to be positive. And then the next thing I want to review real quick is now just like solving problems. So if I have something like -5 minus 7, and I said, what is the first step? the first step in a subtraction problem is to change it to adding the opposite. So the first step in here would be to change and make it -5 plus -7, or change subtraction to addition and 7 to its opposite. So this would be a -5 plus -7. Now my rule for addition says because they're both negative, I can add them together. 5 plus 7 is 12, as long as I reattach that negative sign. Let's look at something like 60. Okay, so that's subtraction, so I need to add the opposite. So my first number stays the same, change subtraction to addition, change the next number to its opposite. They're both positive numbers, so I can add them together, and my final answer is 70. Okay, I'm going to write these next problems out. I want you to pause the video, work the problems out, and then come back and see if you got it correct. So let's do something like okay, so write both of these problems down, pause the video, work them out, and then start the video back up and check your work. Okay. So these are subtraction, so the first number stays the same. Change my subtraction to addition, change the next number to its opposite. It was a positive 33, it becomes a negative 33. Because subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. So now I have one of each. I have to subtract them. So I'm going to do 33 minus 21. That's going to give me 12. 33 is bigger and it's negative, so my 12 should be negative. Over here it's a subtraction problem. I keep my first number the same. I have to change subtraction to addition, change the next number to its opposite, because subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. So now I have one of each. My rules say if I have one of each, I subtract. 17 minus 4 is 13. 17 is bigger and it's positive, so my 13 is positive. So I'm going to post some review type questions for you guys to work on. It is very important that you are completing the assignments the day that they are assigned. Otherwise, it's really easy to get behind, and then I think that's part of the reason why some of you are struggling. You're not doing the assignments in order. So please, 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 please complete assignments on time. When they are assigned, that's the day you're expected to be working on them. Okay? When you turn them in, please do not hit submit unless you have actually completed the work. Okay? I'm still getting people who are turning in work that they've done nothing on. And I'm just going to start deleting them. Usually I write you a nice little note like, hey, this is blank. Please do not turn in assignments that are blank. We are into mid-October. At this point, you guys should be in the routine of don't just hit submit if you haven't done the work. Okay? Assignments are going to start getting marked as late. I've tried to give lots of time for you guys to get in a routine, and I think most of you are doing pretty well with that. But it's a lot of work for me to keep going back and forth, looking to see if you did your assignment or not. So please complete the assignments before you hit submit, and do them in order. So if you missed something, you need to do that before you do the next assignment. Okay? My next thing, your quiz. The day I assign a quiz, unless you have made arrangements with me ahead of time, that's the day that you should be completing the quiz. Okay? So we post, you guys had a quiz today, and I have quite a few people who haven't taken it. It's 8 o'clock at night, and I just got done looking at the grades, and I still have quite a few people who have not taken the quiz. So again, when an assignment is posted, the expectation is that you're doing it the day it's posted. Okay. I'm going to be posting an assignment as a review, and then we will be doing a retake quiz on Thursday over this. I do not typically do this many retakes. However, I do know that getting used to online is different. However, moving forward, I will not just be posting retakes. You will have to be completing some work for me before you're allowed to do a retake, and it will be specific work that would be posted about that quiz or test. So please make sure that you are getting this stuff turned in, that you're asking me if you have questions, and that you're watching those videos and taking notes. Thank you.